Hello everyone, Logic here again, and we're getting back to the topic of hate. This is part 2, and we'll try to dig even further into it and try to talk about some other aspects of it, hopefully. And we'll see how it goes, and I'll do my best to try and touch as much as possible because, like I said, I do believe it's an important topic that needs to be discussed. So, like I said, I left off last one with the story of my friend, my Danish friend, and how that worked out. Like I said, it's a weird one, not because I'm me. You could say that it could be related, but I couldn't make that statement even. I don't know if that's the reason why. But I've seen this happen before. So, personally, I can say I believe that, but I don't know it to be a fact. But you have those situations. Maybe it's karma. I don't know. Maybe that's the reason for that one in particular. But maybe it's because you do express that emotion, which is kind of hateful, even if it's not to the point that you want to kill someone. But still, you get to the point that the frustration gets the better of you. And in my case, like I said, I wanted him to be taken down a peg or two, to be more humble and not be so judgmental. And he had a blow to his life in a way, a physical blow that made him, like I said, out of commission for a while. So, like I said, maybe it's karma, maybe it's something different, I don't know. But the point remains the same. I wished for it, and it happened. So, maybe our emotions and our ideas are more powerful than we give them credit for. Maybe that's why we shouldn't feed the beast, as I said. Because, like I said, when I was talking to this guys on the pre-video, the call in my room, that's one of the things that we touched on. Like, in society even, we have this culture now, and this is true because we have crime movies, murder movies, scary movies, and lots of other categories of movies that sort of, in a way, promotes hate. But as long as it's entertainment, it's okay. So, why is that? Why is that when we... And some people have talked about this. I've heard many people say this very thing, that it comes down to getting that adrenaline rush without actually being in that situation yourself. And that could be part of the explanation, but like I said, I do believe personally that it comes from this fact that it's a primal thing that, how can I say it, tickles us in a way. This primal thing that tickles us, and that's why we get interested in it. It appeals to us on some primal level. But the other side of what we were talking about at the time was the fact that it is sort of condoned within society itself. And we must also be aware that the times have changed. People have changed over time. Like, especially like if you go to some place like those crime-ridden places of the world, a place that immediately comes to mind, especially for those people that have spoken on it, specifically the black community, Chicago comes to mind. And like, in those places it's already been like that for a while. But in the world in general, the value of a life is less than it used to be even. So that plays into it as well. The level of expression of hate is more acceptable. nowadays. It's more accepted to hate people, if you will, to express hate, to do mean things, to threaten people, to, a lot of things, and even actual actions against them in that sort of way. Violence. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but the simplest way to say it is that life is much cheaper than it used to be. And in those places like Chicago, it's even worse than the norm. So, why is that? Like I said, I've already touched on the fact that I do believe it comes from this primal thing within us. But is society to blame as well? Is media part of it? And if media is a part of it, then why? Is it programming, or is it just us dumbing down in some way, where we have become more primal because we lost more of our intellect? Or is it some other reason? Is it lack of communication, for example? That we don't communicate as well, and when we don't understand each other, we respond with hate. Is that it? I don't know. But like I said, it's a very interesting topic to touch on, because like I said in the first part, love and hate are the biggest word in mankind's vocabulary. So, and they are extremes. One on the left side, if you will, and the other one on the right side. I'm just using this as an example, but they are opposites, extremes compared to each other. The different ends of the scale, if you will. So, and I mentioned in part 1 that not so much on YouTube, because like I said, when I do my videos, I'm in full control. I don't do live shows yet. So I'm the one running the show, if you will, because technically it's not a show, it's a video. But when it comes to Hangouts, there's a much more fluent thing that happens. It's a much more fluent format. No, not fluent, fluid. More liquid format than doing a video. Because you meet all sorts of people and you come across all sorts of topics, and sadly you also come across hate. And the reason I say this is because, like I said, I don't know the reason for it, but I've seen it happen. And I can give you an example. Someone will say, and I do agree with the point that they're making on some levels, but I don't agree with the part when they express hate for that individual or that group. Because they could say, for example, if someone is clearly gay, right? And again, this is an example that I come across. They will say, oh, that fucking faggot, he's such a fairy, and so. You know what I mean? That's a typical example that I've seen lots of times. And so, they don't know this person, they never met them, they never talked to them. It might not even be someone who's been on these panels. It's just someone that you could call, for lack of a better term, who they've seen in the media in some way or another, right? And they apparently hate this person for no other reason than that the fact that they are, in this case that I said, this example that I gave, gay. And so they would hate on them for no apparent reason. If I use another term, you could say they hate on them just for being what they are. Right? And you have another thing when it comes to hate. too in this cyber world, which is something called trolls. Some of them are pretty harmless, but some of them, like I said, I did this video called Hila Malaleyu, and from those people, and there's probably more than those two that came to that video, but those two, one of them, their reputation preceded them. So I knew immediately, wow, that's one of them. And I didn't reply to those people because I knew who they were, one by reputation and one by their own name, their nickname. But that's another side of hate. We have to deal with the so-called trolls. My personal attitude, I came across a troll once when I had just subbed to Tommy's main channels, and I came across this troll. But instead of engaging this troll, I just talked to one of the moderators and reported this person. And so, I didn't know enough to the point that I'm at this point not wanting to take this person on because I didn't know who they were and how serious that would become if I did. So I left it. I just gave the moderator the information and directed it to the right video where they had replied to me and left it up to them. Because I said, I don't want to report this person because I don't know who they are and what that will mean in terms of consequences for me. So the moderator was like, no, but I'm glad you reported it and I'll take care of it. I'll make a report of it to YouTube. And they did. So, but me personally, basically what I'm saying is that my personal approach in that case, I will not feed the trolls. Because except for me doing that video, and some of them probably, not only the two that came there, but some of the others probably who saw it as well, probably saw that as my hate video, because I was setting my foot down. And as soon as I did that, there were certain things that I said within the video. There were people also trying to test my limits. Would he follow through? Like, they were testing my resolve. And so it was funny to me because I knew at that point, oh, that person has watched my video. I won't go into detail who it was, but it was funny to me because I said certain specific things. And as soon as the video was out, I had a challenge on that very point by a certain individual. And I was like laughing inside because it was funny to me that you're this transparent. And I also thought at the same time, okay, at least they're watching my videos, so I get some free views from them, even though they might see me in a different way altogether. But yeah, that's how I dealt with it at the time. I didn't address it like that. But like I said, I did report one of them, and like I said, this was even before that video that I made. It was just, like I said, after I said in Tommy's chat after the thing was done that I had subbed to his main channels because I had said so previously. But yeah, I'm not saying it's going to work every time, but I do honestly believe that if you choose not to like feed the trolls, you're going to have less of them eventually, basically, if you ever have trolls. But another thing that I think is also important as a YouTuber is to make sure that your content isn't that provoking to those types of people. You try to be, I wouldn't use the term politically correct because I hate that. I don't support that at all. But to be within reasonable, you know what I mean? Like, be polite when you talk. Don't call anyone by name. Try not to swear so much, which I'm having problems with a little bit, but, I try to stay away from that. And also in the content itself. But that was the difference with the Hila Malaleyu video, because when I did that one, some of these people apparently saw it like my first hate video. And they would use it and flip it around, flip the script basically. I won't go into what they said, but, it was funny to me because it wasn't like that from my side of things, but that was part of the reason some people left my hangout, because they thought in their mind that was out of character for me. It wasn't really, but it was just me being fed up and putting my foot down. But it's seen as my first hate video, ironically enough, since these are titled hate. But I try to come at the angle from them with, try to come at them with a objective analyzation of them, so it can be talked about in a proper way as a proper topic. Because I do, like I said in the previous one, I do believe that this needs to be talked about. This topic needs to be discussed. So those are two different, this one, how many parts it turns out to be, those are completely different from each other. But like I said, so far it's probably been seen as kind of like my quote-unquote hate video. And it's my most seen one so far, ironically enough. That's how internet has become now. If you do anything that's perceived as hate, you get a better response than a good guy video, if you will. So that says something about the internet too. And Chris Thorns, that I watch, I wouldn't say all the time, because he's not so regular like he used to be, but I do watch him when I have the chance, and I know that he's coming on or he's gone on already, but I catch it early and I'll go there if it's a good topic. But he said not only once but twice in his videos that, and this is what we were talking about on this pre-call, this pre-video call in my room, that it's part societal as well. He said that it's programming. Social media is programming. TV is programming. Culture is programming. Advertising is programming. Movies is programming. So what does this do to you in the long run when you're being bombarded with all these impressions of a world, and I won't hold back on this one, in a world where it's so accepted. So I do agree with those guys that I was talking to in my hangout that says, in a way, even though we are ashamed to admit it, the fact remains that we do sort of condone it with those video games that come out. And I think definitely something like GTA is a good example of that. Not that they're not funny to play, but at the same time they are lowering the bar for what's acceptable, because in our mind we're breaking down the barriers. And so I think that has an impact on us, and I think that's part of the explanation as to why it's so easy now compared to like 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's increasingly becoming worse in that field because our barriers, our thresholds for this kind of thing has been lowered. We are more easily swayed to that point nowadays. And everything in culture, I won't go into too much details, but everything in our culture points to this same fact in other ways, basically. We're seeing a breakdown of society. We're seeing a breakdown of family. We're seeing a breakdown of values, of morals, whatever, It's not a good situation. And when I realized I had this 19-year-old say to me, because I'm 42, but this guy was 19, and the older people they tend to say like, oh, it was better before, back in the day, something like that, or that the young people today is so and so. But when you hear someone that young say it's not getting better, it's getting worse, that actually makes you stop and think, wow, when young people even are thinking like this, it's not just you being an old fart getting more sensitive to these things, but it's actually getting worse. And that was quite an eye-opener to me, that the world has gotten so bad that even our young ones is starting to notice. And they are stronger than us because that's within the very code of it, how it works. When you're young, you're stronger, plain and simple. But now it's even bothering them. So that's another reason why I have tried to do what I have tried to do, not only with my channel and the content on it, but also with my Hangout, to create a different vibe, a different atmosphere, to sort of counter this looming hate that is ever present, always there, always lurking, always ready to strike. And like I said, I don't feel that I have succeeded fully. Absolutely not. But I do keep on trying though, because I do believe that's important too. I know we probably can't change it, but we have to try at least. I think it's every person's duty who has a conscience to try. That's the bare minimum, basically, in my book. And I'll be the first to say, I haven't always succeeded. No, definitely not. I fall victim to the same problems as everyone else. I have the same flaws, that I go into the same traps. And like I said, this one is so basic, so primal, it's easier to fall into this particular one. So it's something we all do. But like I said, there are levels to it. And I follow this principle that if you do it, I learned this expression about, you know, the famous saying, shame on you. Shame on you if you fool me once. Shame on me if you fool me twice. But third time, it's enemy action. It means if you do something like that, kind of evil in a way, even though it's not to its most extreme level, if you do it 3 times, you're basically doing it on purpose, you're doing it premeditated, and you're doing it to be evil. And you're expressing hate in a way. And nowadays, I've heard people express that hate for someone because they cried at a certain movie, they are considered to be a faggot, they just from people even misunderstanding. I don't know if that's the truth with what I was referring to in my personal life. I don't know if that person was actually believing what they themselves were saying. I don't know, because I'm not them. But if I want to give that person the benefit of the doubt, I have to say, if they actually believe it, then I have to forgive them, because it's clearly a misunderstanding, but still it can hurt. So, you know, and I like the first things that you can know about me in that sense, when it comes to that point from someone else with me, someone expressing their hate towards me in a way, then, and I'm not saying this is the case, but it's just when you're not strong in that moment. It happened to me twice on Chris's show. I broke down, not because all of them were acting like that, but it's definitely different when it's a group dynamic also. Because it tends to be like the shark pool. And you don't feel strong because you're by yourself and they're more of a group together. So even if there was no ill intention, that's how we are as humans. We tend to, what's the word in English? We tend to gang up in a way, even if we're not aware of it fully. That's, like I said, it's so primal, we're not even aware of it fully. So I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's how it feels. And people will say grow a pair or get a thicker skin, but I disagree with that statement, because you are the way you are, and you can only hope that you can do better next time, but you can't literally change. You are who you are. Especially the older you are, it's difficult to actually change, but you can do better just from experience. But you can't literally change. You can just adapt better from experience. Like, I can give you an example. And this is another example of the most serious type of, like I said, there's different examples, different fields, but like I said, different types of hate. I had this situation where at a very young age, I was hitchhiking, and then this guy stopped and he picked me up and he wanted me to come home with him. And I was only 16 at the time. And so first everything was normal. I got into the car and everything was fine. Then soon enough, the conversation turned to if I had a girlfriend, and if I had a girlfriend, what we were doing together. And then finally the point where he asked me if I wanted to come home with him. And this was an older guy, seriously older than me at the time. And he was not attractive at all. He was, I can't explain that to you, how he was, but I felt so disgusted when he got to that point, you know. And it scared the living daylights out of me, but I was able to get out of it somehow. I was always been pretty good thinking on my feet, right? But then the next time that happened, I was hitchhiking on a completely different place, and the same thing happened again. A guy pulled over, because I'm hitchhiking, and the conversation soon turned that way. I didn't get into his car, thankfully. But I knew how to handle it then. So I was equally scared, even though I was older and everything. But not only did I have my replica on me, my 1911 replica, but I also had a non-working but charged, if you will, phone. It lit up and everything, so it looked like it was working. So I just pulled out my phone at the time and said, if you don't leave, I'm calling the police. And if you would have held on to that point and refused to comply, I would have pulled out my replica and said, get the fuck out of here or I'm going to shoot you. Threatened him just like that. So that would have been me expressing false hate as a security mechanism, if you will. Self-protection, basically. But to actually try to molest someone that way is another form of hate. And like I said, I've had it happen to me a couple of times in my life, especially when I was younger. And once even it happened in my life once, the actual thing. But 2 times I was put into that place of insecurity with people who clearly said one thing but meant another. So again, there's levels and there's different expressions of it, but I would say that all of these things are different types of expressions of hate. And I'm gonna stop this now, and in a few seconds or whatever, and I'm gonna move on to part 3, because this is part 2, but part 3 is gonna be hopefully a little bit different, because even I see now the way this turned out right now is different from part 1. So I'm hoping that I'm touching on all the bases here. But anyway, see you in a little while, and get ready for part 3 on the topic of hate.